The mistake of the Zarn Empire. The sky tore open above the green lungs of Earth, and from the rip in the heavens came the ships of the Zarn, smooth black beasts, shaped like knives cutting through clouds with glowing eyes that scanned the ground. For threats but found only trees, rivers, and silence. They had come far from the Orion Drift, had studied Earth from orbit, and concluded the planet was soft, a world of emotion, song, water, and primitive fire. They had enslaved a dozen planets already, and Earth was to be their jewel, a planet of weaklings to serve and obey. The first message came in every human language simultaneously, broadcast on screens, radios, phones, and even echoed through the air in strange pulses: surrender now and serve the Zarn Empire, or be wiped from existence. Your resistance will be brief, and your pain eternal. But Earth did not reply. Not one government, not one army, not one scientist, not one leader stepped forward to plead or bow or negotiate. And the silence unnerved Commander Vac of the Zarn Conquest Fleet. He had studied species for centuries and knew that those who begged could be broken easily. But silence, that was something else. Silence was the sound predators made when they were still watching, when they were not yet ready to strike, but would soon. Commander Vac ordered the first descent squad to land in the Amazon rainforest. They were elite scouts, armored in living metal sensors on every surface, weapons that could liquefy stone. They moved like ghosts across jungle floors, scanning for signs of human life. But there was nothing, no heat signatures, no gunfire, no traps, only nature and wind, until one of them vanished, then another and another. No explosions, no screams, only flashes of movement, branches swaying with no wind, vines curling where no vines should exist, and a thick smell like sweat and iron in the air. Something moved faster than their sensors. Something crawled above them in the canopy and waited, watched, measured their steps, their breathing, their fear. Then the last of them. Trellin activated his emergency beacon. His voice cracked through static to the command ship. They are not prey, they are not prey. His scream was swallowed by the forest. His body was never found. Commander Vac dismissed the incident as local wildlife interference and sent a second wave, this time with aerial drones, armored flyers, and thermal trackers. They found nothing. Again, not even the bodies of the first squad, just gear dropped in place, weapons with blood, but no signs of struggle. At the same time, across the globe, more Zarn landing parties were touching down in cities, deserts, and islands, expecting parades of fear instead, finding empty streets, blackout zones, and total radio silence, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. In one small village near the Andes, a group of Zarn entered an abandoned shack to find it filled with strange symbols painted in human blood, walls marked with the words "You will not leave," and beneath it an old hunting spear with fresh Zarn blood on its tip. In space, the Zarn fleet began to detect strange pulses from Earth ground stations, invisible to human eyes, but corrupting their data streams, slowly crawling into their communication nets like viruses with teeth. And then the jungle screamed, not in fear but in rage. Earth had responded. It had sent its oldest message, carved into the bones of history, written not in code or diplomacy, but in the act of vanishing an entire squad of elite invaders without leaving a single trace. Commander Vac stared at the Earth through the viewing screen, and for the first time in over 200 years of conquest, he felt something crawl down his spine. It was not fear, not yet, but something older, something primal, something he had not felt since his training days, when he once stared into the eyes of a predator that did not blink, that did not run, that did not care about armor or rank or weapons. He whispered to himself a question not meant for any of his officers. Did we land in a cage or a den? And Earth stayed quiet, but not for long. Trees were still, but something within them had begun to move, and it was not afraid, it was hunting, and it was smiling. First city burns. The Zarn thought the cities would be easy to conquer, places where machines ruled and humans hid behind steel and glass. They imagined themselves gods descending on their prey, but Earth had other plans. The first city to feel their wrath was New Haven, a sprawling metropolis with towering skyscrapers and streets tangled like webs. The Zarn fleet swarmed down like locusts. their hovercraft shining cold lights over the crowded avenues, expecting submission. Instead, they found something fiercer than steel. Or Fyra was young, but her eyes held the weight of loss and fire. She was not a soldier or a leader, but when the Zarn attacked her neighborhood, she rose like a storm. Her father had taught her to hunt in the woods and to never show fear. When the hovercrafts landed and the soldiers marched out, she vanished into the maze of alleys and underground tunnels. In the shadows, Kara gathered whoever would follow, old men, women, children, all armed with makeshift weapons and rage. They knew the city better than any alien could. They set traps in the streets, twisted wires coated with acid-filled shards, pits covered by flimsy boards, waiting for the first step. The Zarn soldiers laughed at the sight of humans wielding sticks and knives. But the laughter died quickly when Kara and her band struck. The traps were crude but deadly, catching hovercraft wheels in sticky nets and sending sparks flying from hidden charges. The Zarn shields flared and failed, and the soldiers found themselves trapped in cages of metal and fire. Kara moved like a ghost, darting through smoke and chaos. Her voice was a command and a promise. "You will not take this city without a fight," she screamed. Her team cut communication lines and sabotaged alien weapons, leaving the invaders blind and confused. The Zarn general, Drax, stormed through his command ship, furious and humiliated. He watched the screens as his best troops fell one by one to humans who knew no fear, humans who fought not for glory or orders, but for survival and revenge. The general roared at his officers, telling them to bring in the heavy weapons, but the city itself seemed alive, twisting and turning against them like a beast defending its young. The streets burned with fires set by angry citizens. The air was thick with smoke and screams, but still the humans fought with tooth and claw. Even when wounded, they pulled themselves up again and charged at their alien foes with broken glass and shattered metal. Drax sent in reinforcements, a mechanized squad clad in thick armor and armed with plasma rifles, but Kara had anticipated this and led her fighters into the old subway tunnels below the city. There they waited in darkness and silence until the machines passed overhead. Then they struck hard, tearing through steel plating and crushing gears with hydraulic hammers and Molotov cocktails filled with chemicals stolen from the city labs. The machines fell like trees in a storm, and the humans cheered their victory. But Kara knew this was only the beginning. Above ground, the Zarn commanders could not understand how such primitive beings could fight with such intelligence and coordination, how their instincts and raw emotions forged strategies more deadly than any computer program. In one moment of calm, Kara found a small radio transmitter, broken and battered, and with shaking hands she broadcast a message to every human survivor in the city. "This is not the end, it is the beginning. Stand with us or fall like sheep." The city answered with gunfire and howls of defiance as more and more people joined the fight. They were not trained soldiers, but every human heart beat with the fierce blood of hunters. Commander Vac watched the live feeds from orbit and for the first time doubted the Zarn doctrine. The humans were not prey, they were predators in a world that bred monsters, not victims. The commander ordered all ships to prepare for full invasion. But in the back of his mind, he remembered Trullin's last words, "Are not prey," and somewhere in the darkness of the tunnels, Kara and her fighters prepared for the next battle, ready to show the universe that Earth would never bow. Shall I write Part 3 now? Sony, minimum 800 words, full flow, no commas, no dots, waiting for your confirmation to continue. Captured and confused, the battlefield was a shattered landscape of broken metal, smoldering fires and echoes of battle cries. But amidst the ruin, a strange silence fell over the captured Zarn soldier. Davis was his name, a human fighter torn from his comrades by luck and fury. His hands were bound, his eyes burning with pain and defiance as the alien commanders studied him through cold lenses and shimmering screens. They wanted to know why the humans fought so fiercely, why they bled and screamed and never surrendered. Davis looked at them not with fear, but with a hard clarity that unsettled even the highest ranking Zarn. The cage around him was cold, but his spirit was hotter than any forge. He remembered the day his village burned, How his mother had taught him to hide in the shadows and never trust kindness from strangers. His world was shaped by loss, war, and endless struggle, and every scar told a story of survival. Alien scientists spoke in a voice smooth and clinical, asking why the humans resisted, why they did not simply fall like all the others. Davis answered with a steady voice, "You came to conquer lions, not sheep. Earth is not a playground for weaklings. It is a place where pain sharpens the soul, where suffering breeds monsters." He told them stories from his childhood, the nights spent hunting with nothing but a spear, the harsh winters when hunger was a constant companion, and the unspoken rule that you never show weakness. Even the smallest child knew how to fight, how to survive, how to become the predator in a world that expected you to be prey. The Zarn commanders were confused. They had studied the humans through data and sensors, but they had never understood the raw emotion, the desperate will to live that burned in their veins. They had seen strength, but never the hunger that came with it. The humans were unpredictable, and that was dangerous. Davis spoke of the forests where shadows moved with purpose, of the rivers that hid deadly currents, and the mountains where the air was thin and unforgiving. He explained how every part of Earth was a test, a challenge, and those who failed were forgotten. But those who survived became legends. Aliens could not comprehend how such a fragile-looking species had mastered so many weapons, so many tactics, and so many brutal forms of combat. All they saw was flesh and bone, but Davis told them about the heart and mind that refused to break. As the interrogation went on, Davis felt a strange mix of anger and pity. The Zarn were powerful, yes, but they lacked one thing: the fire to truly understand what it meant to survive on Earth, to endure when everything was against you, to become the monster you must to win outside the cage. A shadow moved silently. It was Reese, the human-enhanced soldier from the secret predator, one program sent to strike fear into alien hearts. Reese watched the interrogation through the glass and nodded in approval. This man spoke the truth. The Zarn commanders decided to test Davis further by throwing him into a simulated Earth environment where survival was key. The human adapted with fierce intelligence and cunning, escaping traps, outsmarting drones, and turning the environment against his captors. The aliens watched amazed as he became the hunter and not the hunted. The experiment failed to break him. It only proved that Earth-bred warriors who used every tool, every pain, every scar as a weapon. Davis was more than a soldier. He was a symbol of what humanity had become, a force forged in fire and blood. Commander Vac paced in his quarters, pondering the results. He had believed in the superiority of the Zarn, but now he faced a terrifying truth. Humans were not prey, they were the predators. Earth was a crucible that transformed the weak into monsters, and he had brought his forces to a battlefield they were not prepared for. He whispered to himself, a warning for those who would listen. The mistake was not in underestimating humans, it was in thinking that Earth would welcome conquerors. And as Davis was led back to his cell, a faint smile crossed his lips, for he knew that this war was only beginning, and that the true predator was waking. Shall I write Part 4 now? Sony, minimum 800 words, full flow. Without commas, no dots, just confirm, and I will continue immediately. Predator awakens deep within the secret underground facility, hidden beneath the ruins of an old factory. A project known only to a few was about to change the course of the war. The Predator 1 program was humanity's last hope, a soldier unlike any other designed to face the alien threat head-on. Reese was that soldier, born from endless training enhancements and the fierce will to survive. He moved through the jungle shadows with a grace that was almost supernatural. His senses were sharpened beyond normal human limits. His reflexes were faster than any machine, and his strength rivaled the largest beasts on Earth. He carried with him a blade forged from rare Earth metals that could melt through the living metal armor of the Zarn with ease. Reese had been trained for this moment since childhood. Pushed beyond pain, beyond fear, beyond limits, he was a weapon made flesh, a hunter created to fight monsters. With monsters, when the Zarn invasion began, the world governments pooled their resources and unleashed him on the front lines. His First mission was to track and eliminate the elite Zarn scouting squads that haunted the Amazon jungle. These squads had already decimated dozens of human patrols and spread fear among the surviving tribes. Reese moved silently, watching the flickers of movement in the trees, listening to the faintest sounds of mechanical limbs. Suddenly the air shifted, and the alien squad appeared, their weapons raised, their sensors scanning the dense foliage. They were confident, unaware of the shadow waiting to strike. Reese lunged forward with a speed no human could match. His blade sliced through armor and circuits, leaving a trail of destruction. One by one the Zarn fell, their bodies hitting the forest floor with heavy thuds. The squad tried to regroup, but Reese was everywhere, a phantom, a force of nature. He used the environment as a weapon, tearing down vines, swinging from branches and striking from above with deadly precision. The last alien tried to flee, but Reese caught him with a brutal grip. Snapping metal like twigs, the hunter whispered in the alien tongue, "You chose the wrong planet." Back at the command ship, Commander Vac received reports of the massacre and felt a chill run through his armored chest. The humans had unleashed something beyond his understanding, something that could turn the tide of the war in ways he had not predicted. The Predator One was not just a soldier, he was a symbol of humanity's refusal to die quietly. Meanwhile, Kara and Davis heard whispers among the resistance fighters of a ghost in the jungle, a warrior who appeared and disappeared, leaving only destruction. In his wake, they hoped it was true that Earth had awakened its ultimate weapon. Reese moved beyond the jungle, taking down Zarn communication towers and sabotaging supply lines. His presence became a legend among humans and a nightmare among aliens. The forest seemed alive with his fury, and the planets trembled under the weight of his wrath. But Reese was more than just a weapon. He was a man with memories of loss and love. A man who fought not for glory, but to protect the fragile hope of a broken world. His eyes burned with a fierce determination to end the invasion and restore peace to Earth. As the war raged on, the balance began to shift. The Zarn commanders grew cautious, sending fewer patrols and calling for reinforcements. But Earth had already changed the rules of engagement, and the Predator was no longer just a myth. Commander Vac realized that this war would not be won with technology alone, but with understanding, the fierce spirit of a species that had turned pain into power and weakness into strength. And in the heart of the jungle, the Predator waited, ready to strike again, ready to show the universe that Earth-bred predators, not prey. Shall I continue now with Part 5? Sony, minimum 800 words, full flow without commas and dots. Just confirm, and I will write it immediately. The turning point. The skies above Earth darkened with the arrival of the Zarn home fleet, vast warships casting shadows like ancient gods, ready to finish what had begun. Their weapons gleamed cold and deadly, ready to crush the last resistance. But Earth was no longer the helpless world it once seemed. The humans had learned to fight as one, and the tide was turning. Scientists from around the world worked tirelessly in hidden labs, using radio waves and ancient sonar technology to create a virus unlike any other. A digital poison that infiltrated Zarn systems, spreading through their ships and weapons, disabling drones and communication arrays like a silent plague creeping through enemy ranks. Kara, Davis, and Reese formed a coalition, combining their strengths. Kara, the fearless leader who inspired the masses. Davis, the battle-hardened soldier who understood the enemy. And Reese, the Predator born for this fight. Together, they planned the final assault on the alien command base, hidden deep in the mountains. A fortress of steel and fire that controlled the invasion. Journey was perilous, through forests thick with traps and mines, through abandoned towns haunted by ghosts of war. But the trio pushed forward, driven by a desperate hope and unbreakable will. They moved like shadows, striking swiftly, avoiding patrols and sabotaging supply lines, leaving destruction in their wake. As they approached the base, the humans unleashed the virus, disabling turrets and scrambling sensors, allowing their forces to slip inside unseen. Reese led the charge, cutting through alien soldiers with ruthless efficiency, while Kara coordinated resistance fighters, securing key positions. Davis hacked into the command systems, turning alien weapons against their own. Battle inside the fortress was fierce, and chaotic screams echoed through metal corridors. Fires raged and explosions shook the ground, but the humans fought with the fury of those who had everything to lose. They fought not just for survival, but for the future of their planet, their families, and their species. Thousands fell on both sides, but the human spirit burned brighter than ever. Reese found the core of the invasion, a massive data center pulsating with energy and guarded by the fiercest Zarn warriors. He fought through the ranks with a blade that sang death, and with every strike the core grew weaker. Kara stood beside him, rallying fighters and cutting off escape routes. The final moments were a blur of light, sound, and fury when the core finally exploded, sending a shockwave that shattered the fortress and silenced the alien threat. As dust settled and fires died, the survivors looked around the battlefield, their faces etched with pain, loss, and hope. Earth had won, but the cost was high. The Zarn home fleet retreated, battered and broken, their invasion crushed, but the war had changed everything. Commander Vac watched the destruction from his flagship, his pride shattered, replaced by a grudging respect for a species that refused to be conquered. The humans had shown him that Earth was no place for prey, only predators. Kara, Davis, and Reese stood together amidst the ruins, their bodies battered, but their spirits unbroken. They knew the war was won, but the battle for Earth's future was just beginning, a future where humans would never again be hunted or enslaved. And somewhere deep in the shadows, a new voice whispered a warning that the predator was not done yet, that Earth's true strength was still waiting to be unleashed. Shall I continue with part 6 now? Sony, minimum 800 words. Full flow, no commas, no dots, just confirm, and I will write immediately what survived the war. The war was over, but the scars it left ran deep across the lands and in the hearts of all who had lived through the nightmare. Cities lay in ruins, forests were scorched, and oceans polluted. But from the ashes, a new world began to rise, a world forever changed by the fury of those who refused to bow the nations of Earth, cast aside old rivalries, and united under a single banner. The Council of Earth was formed to rebuild, to protect, and to prepare for any future threats. Humanity had learned its greatest lesson, that survival meant strength, unity, and the courage to face darkness. With open eyes, Kara took her place as a leader, not just of fighters but of teachers. She opened a school where the children of survivors learned to fight, to think, to survive in a world that could no longer be gentle. The lessons were harsh but necessary for a future where Earth would never again be caught off guard. Davis worked to heal the wounds of war, helping veterans and refugees, finding peace in the hope that one day the pain could be replaced with laughter and life. He taught that the monster inside could be tamed, but never forgotten, for it was the monster that had saved them. Reese vanished into the legends whispered around campfires and in the halls of power. Some said he had died in the final battle, others that he had gone to the stars to find new threats to face, but all agreed that he was the symbol of a humanity reborn, fierce and unyielding. Among the survivors was a young Zarn child found wandering the ruins, her eyes wide with fear and curiosity. She was taken in by Kara's school, learning human ways and stories, slowly understanding the planet that had turned her people back. The child began to grasp the fierce love and pain that made Earth different, a place where even the weakest could become monsters. The world changed in ways no one had predicted. People learned to listen to the wind, to read the scars on the earth, and to respect the wildness within themselves. The predator within was not just a fighter, but a guardian, a force born from the need to protect and endure. New threats would come, as they always do, but Earth was ready, now ready to stand tall and face whatever darkness the universe might send. Reese's legacy lived in every heart that refused to give up, every hand that reached out to help, every eye that saw danger but chose courage. The stars above looked down on Earth and saw a planet alive with strength and spirit, no longer prey but a predator awake and watching. A planet that had learned the hard way that survival was not a gift, but a battle fought with blood, sweat, and unbreakable will. And somewhere in the quiet forests, A new story began, a story of hope, pain, and the fierce fire that burned in every human soul ready to face the unknown with open arms and sharpened claws. Shall I proceed to write Part 7, final part, Sony minimum. 800 words, full flow, without commas, no earth sends a message. Years had passed since the great war that changed everything. The earth had healed and humanity had grown stronger, wiser, and more united than ever. The scars of the past were still visible in broken buildings and shattered landscapes, but the spirit of the people burned brighter than the fiercest star. The story of the predator who walked among them had become legend, a symbol of the power that pain and survival had forged. Far from Earth, a distant planet once ruled by the Zarn lay silent beneath twin suns. Its jungles were dense and full of strange life, its cities now crumbled monuments to a fallen empire. The survivors of the Zarn fleet had returned home broken and humiliated, but some among them still dreamed of revenge and conquest. On the surface of this planet, a small group of human explorers landed their ship, cutting through the alien sky like a comet. They moved cautiously through the jungle, their weapons ready, their senses alert, but there was no fear, only determination. They carried with them the legacy of Earth. The lessons learned from a war fought not just with guns but with heart and soul. A banner was unfurled on the strange soil, a simple message written in bold letters: Earth was here. The words were more than a claim, they were a warning, a promise, and a declaration of survival. The humans stood tall, proud, and unyielding, knowing that they were no longer the prey but the predators. Among the explorers was a young woman named Lyra, who had trained since childhood to be part of this mission. She had heard the stories of Reese, Kara, and Davis, the heroes who had changed the fate of her world. She knew that the path ahead was uncertain, but she was ready to face whatever challenges awaited. As they ventured deeper into the alien jungle, strange sounds echoed around them, whispers of the past and shadows that moved just beyond sight. The explorers pressed on, trusting their instincts and each other. Their bond was strong, their will unbreakable, and their purpose clearing the distance alone. Zarn Scout watched from the shadows, his eyes wide with fear and awe. He had heard the legends of Earth's predators, but now he saw them with his own eyes. A species that walked without armor, that faced danger without hesitation, and that carried the fire of survival in every step. Scout retreated silently, knowing that the universe had changed forever. The balance of power was shifting, and Earth was no longer a place to conquer, but a force to be reckoned with. A planet that bred monsters not out of cruelty, but out of the necessity to survive and protect what was theirs. Lyra and her team set up their base camp near an ancient ruin, their hearts beating with excitement and caution. They sent messages back to Earth, broadcasting images of the alien world and their plans to explore and understand it. Theirs was a mission not of conquest, but of discovery and respect. The stars above twinkled as if watching the new chapter unfold, a chapter where humans no longer hid behind fear, but stepped forward as hunters and guardians, ready to explore the unknown and face the darkness with eyes wide open and hearts strong. And so Earth sent its message across the cosmos, a message carved not in stone or fire, but in the spirit of a people who refused to be prey, who chose to become predators, who learned that survival was not just about living, but about fighting for every breath, every step, and every dream. The galaxy would remember that Earth was home to a species forged in fire, pain, and unyielding will, a species that rose not by chance, but by choice, a species that was ready to claim its place among the stars. The end of 7 parts complete. If you want, I can help you with SEO, titles, descriptions, or thumbnails for this story, or anything else. Sony, just tell me. Earth sends a message. Years had passed since the war that reshaped the fate of humanity. Earth had healed slowly, but the spirit of its people had grown stronger, sharper, and more determined than ever. Stories of heroes who fought with nothing but heart and fire had become legends, whispered in every corner of the world. Among those stories was one that echoed louder than the Fayong Rest, the story of the predator who never stopped hunting, far beyond the stars on a planet once ruled by the Zarn. Silence reigned over ruins and wild jungles, The great empire was no more, yet the scars of defeat lingered deep in the minds of the survivors. Some dreamed of revenge, but the truth was clear. Earth was no longer a prize to be taken, but a force that had awakened and would not be stopped. A small band of humans landed on that distant world, their ship cutting through alien skies. Like streaks of hope, they came not to conquer, but to explore, to learn, and to carry the legacy of a planet that had taught them how to survive, how to fight, how to become more than prey. Among them was Lyra, a warrior shaped by stories and training. Her eyes bright with courage, and her heart steady with purpose. She knew the path would be hard, filled with dangers unseen, but she carried within her the spirit of Earth, the fire that burned in every human soul. They marched into the dense jungle, shadows wrapping around them like whispers of the past. The strange sounds and hidden eyes watched, but the humans pressed forward, united, fearless, and ready. Their every step was a message, a declaration that they belonged here and everywhere else. They chose to go from the shadows. A lone Zarn scout observed, trembling with a mix of fear and respect. He had heard tales of Earth's strength, but seeing it was something else. It was a species that faced the universe without armor, without hesitation. A species that had mastered pain and turned it into power. The scouts slipped away silently, knowing the balance of power had shifted forever. Earth had risen from the ashes, not as victims, but as predators, fierce, unyielding, and relentless. Lyra and her team set up camp near ancient ruins, sending signals back to their home world, images and messages telling of discovery and hope, not conquest or destruction. Their mission was clear: to understand and protect, to explore and defend the legacy of a world that refused to be broken. Above them, the stars watched silently as a new chapter began. A chapter of courage, of strength, of a species that learned to fight, not just for survival but for honor and future. A species ready to claim its place among the endless night. Earth sent its message across the cosmos, not carved in stone, but written in the hearts of its people. A message that said, we are here, we are fierce, and we will not be prey ever again. The galaxy would remember Earth as the home of warriors born from fire, pain, and unyielding will. A home of predators, not victims. A home of those who chose to rise and claim their destiny. The end.